Maybe it's the grays in my hair, but I feel like a proud papa or like an uncle seeing all the things that you've been growing into and accomplishing out in the world.
Hi, my name is Leah Thomas, also known as Green Girl Leah, and I'm an environmental justice author, advocate, and the founder of Intersectional Environmentalist, and this is Earthspeed.
Leah, it has been way too long. It's been years now. So much has happened. I've been watching you. I've been cheering you on. I've been so excited about all the incredible work you've been doing. So proud. Maybe it's the grays in my hair, but I feel like a proud papa or like an uncle. Just, you know, seeing you, all the things that you've been growing into and accomplishing out in the world. But for those out in the audience who don't know what you've been doing, you want to give us a little brief overview? Maybe talk a little bit about how we met and then what happened from then. So it's been about 2 years since our worlds collided, since we intersected.
Intersections, yeah.
Yes, and then here we are again, sort of like it's like the double helix.
A double helix. It's all the way back.
Intersecting, coming apart, coming back together in flow. But yeah, tell the audience, who is Leah Thomas? Who is Green Girl Leah?
Yeah, so I feel like our meeting was so cool when I met you 2 years ago. I don't know if you remember, it wasn't that long ago, but I feel like you gave me some really incredible advice during the summer of 2020 after I left my job at Patagonia, which was kind of my dream company to work for. And I had been asked to come back in this new position that kind of focused on equity. And I decided to kind of go out on my own and just talk a little bit more about environmental justice and intersectional environmentalism. And at that time, I had never experienced, I guess, a viral moment online, especially talking about environmental justice education. But it just felt like a really cool moment to raise awareness about, you know, the importance of environmental justice, some of the unsung heroes and grassroots environmental organizers, and trying to create kind of a collective of people to just share free resources that are educational and about, you know, the intersections of social justice and environmentalism. And we met because we did this really cool Instagram live. You're one of the first people that was like, you know, what you're talking about is pretty cool. I feel like maybe this is a valid thing that we could talk about. And I really appreciate that moment. And then separately, you kind of gave me advice about just navigating this world of, I don't even know what was happening at that time, virality. So I appreciate it.
Buckle up. Buckle up. You're going to have a lot of people coming at you, wanting things from you, wanting to, hangers on, trying to leech, trying to hate. A lot of haters, I'm sure.
There's a lot of haters, but I'm sure you have had your fair share of fans and haters. Dare I say, entourage is out there in the world. So yeah, it's been a cool journey since then.
Yeah, so you basically presented, I think, an idea to the world that was, I guess, never occurred to anybody at the time, right? It was just like, oh, boom, big light bulb moment for the world. So what was that idea? Intersectional environmentalism. What is that?
Yeah, so I was really trying to understand my place kind of as a Black environmentalist, someone that really cared about conservation and, you know, solving the climate crisis, but also during 2020 with the racial awakening, quote unquote, and, you know, lots of talks about racial justice. I wanted to see where those two things intersected. And I felt like there was, you know, a beautiful study of environmental justice that's been around for decades, but it just wasn't getting enough support, in my opinion, or funding and amplification. So I just, in my own head, thought about kind of creating my own type of environmentalism where environmental justice wasn't separate, but was just embedded deeply into it. And I thought about intersectional theory that's been around since the 90s that kind of explores overlapping identities. And I thought, how cool would it be if this new environmentalism that I could kind of create in my own head looked at things like race and gender and income inequality and made sure that the people that are most impacted by the climate crisis or environmental injustice aren't left out of the conversation. So that's what intersectional environmentalism is, just making sure you don't kind of turn a blind eye to who's the most impacted by environmental issues. But it's not just about the trauma of environmental injustice. It's also about highlighting some of the really beautiful stories of women and LGBTQ plus folks and Black and Brown and Indigenous folks and their positive contributions to environmental history and knowledge. So I want to make sure people know it's not just about the trauma of environmental injustice. It's also about just showcasing those really cool stories that I think should be out there.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's just been so much doom and gloom, so much catastrophizing of the environment, of our lives. It almost conditions us and trains us to be self-fulfilled advocates for the worst case scenario, in which we're now all conditioned to make the world as terrible as we imagine it to be. And so it's so important to have those positive, optimistic stories of hope. And also I think that's the way nature does it, right? I mean, nature is always looking for a positive spin on life. How, just when you think everything's dead and gone, something sprouts up and is blooming.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I think climate optimism, especially maybe in the last year, has just really stood out to me. It's not that I don't want to be a realist or anything. Like, obviously, I know that things are, the world is not always so great. But I feel like this movement, this environmental movement, needs a bit of hope and solutions to be able to sustain itself. Or even just me, I have to be motivated by the possibilities of the future and not just like, if someone's like, there is no future, that leads to apathy for me. So, yeah.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. How do you come to an honest, but an accurate assessment of the world? And this is something that I've been struggling with because we take a lot of these things for granted. We hear the catchphrases. There's a lot of taglines that tell us that we have, till 2030, till everything, just dies all of a sudden, all in one fell swoop. What is the accurate assessment of where we are environmentally, and how do we come at it appropriately so that we're not overly indexing for catastrophe, but we're also seeing things realistically?
That's a great question. I try to be realistic with myself and talk about, the carbon that's in the atmosphere, but I always try to balance that with solutions. Like, I kind of have to do that in my head. And I know that, regenerative organic agriculture might not scale as fast as it can, but it is a really cool solution, and having, healthier soils. And I love geeking out about carbon sequestration and things like that. So I feel like when I acknowledge some of those issues, like, okay, we got to get this carbon out of the atmosphere, trying to figure out the solutions that are there, and thinking about, okay, well, what if they just had enough funding, or if we could have policy changes to be able to scale these solutions. So I try to remind myself whenever there's a problem, balancing it with a solution, and then understanding, new kitty.
There's one solution right there.
She's like, yeah. But then always trying to balance it with some sort of solution. So I feel like we have all the solutions that we need to tackle environmental injustice in our local communities, and there are organizations that have been doing work for decades. And we just have to find them, support them, get them funding, amplify their work, etc. And that keeps me kind of level-headed, because we do have the solutions, in my opinion, not every single one, but we just need to get through some hurdles so they can scale.
I guess I personally had a revelation of sorts in which I realized that I was touting a lot of rhetoric that I'd learned or that I'd come to adopt that wasn't serving my personal ability to contribute to those solutions. They were sort of keeping me playing in a certain mindset. Talk to me about some of the solutions. Like, what are the ones that are like really, truly getting you excited? Because I feel like when, like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the same mindset that created it. And in many ways, I look at this whole idea that we can save the planet or save the environment feels to me a lot like colonial thinking, in which we're going to impose our will upon the earth. It's the same sense that like we're somehow going to control it and exploit it, which is what we've been doing. And it's the same impulse. So what are the real solutions that keep our egos and our instinct to control and dominate so that we can become in harmony with the earth?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, even talking about saving the planet is so rooted in saviorism, especially because, some humans have destroyed it. That's a good question. I don't know. I would agree with you there. I guess I don't. So I don't know if it's the idea.
Do you think it's people
that are the problem?
No, that are the solution.
Oh, yeah. I was like, maybe.
Because when I think of intersectional environmentalism, I think about it's your focus on the human component.
Yeah, I would definitely
humanity
say can be the solution. Humans also having a better appreciation for animals and our ecosystems, and then seeing the earth as also a living being, I think is really important, and not just a commodity to extract from, but that, and not to get too hippy dippy, but that, these plants and these trees are
bring it. Yeah.
That are still living. So I think having that better respect for, okay, these are other living beings that, and together we can help restore the earth. And, if we're able to plant more trees, sequester more carbon, just let earth do its thing without us continuously extracting from it, I think that the earth can heal itself with our help. So I think we play a huge role in restoration to help the earth get back to where it needs to be, because I think it already has so many natural solutions that can kind of clean up the problems that, humans have caused. But yeah, just really creating better relationships and respect of the earth and letting it just do its thing, and helping it get to that point by restoring, carbon sinks and things like that.
I totally agree. I mean, humans are such an important part of the earth. I mean, we are from the earth. We are of the earth. And, there's a saying, reduce your carbon footprint. But the one I much prefer is maximize your handprint.
Ooh.
Right? Because we have such a capacity to do wonderful, beautiful things when we're operating from the right mindset, from a heart alignment, and then we put our energy and capacity, our creative capacity into a project, we'll make it work. So I feel like it's a lot of environmentalism is anti-human in many ways. It's like shaming and blaming. It's like, just wish you would disappear. No, I think you need to step up.
No, I completely agree. And then not all humans are a part of the problem as much as other ones. I don't know. I want to definitely give credit to so many indigenous populations all over the world that are protecting the world's biodiversity. So if people are really anti-human and like humans have destroyed this earth, that feels kind of like a blanket statement that's not necessarily true, because there's so many land defenders all over the world.
It's kind of humanist, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like anti-human, but we have within us, the capacity for good and ill. So how do we inspire people to find the most positive contribution that they can possibly from where they are?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what comes to mind for me, intersectional, maybe because it has the same prefix, but interdependence. You ever explore how those two words might, because like nature is like a complex interdependent network of infinite things. everything is important. Everything has a role. And I think with humans too, like we have a role. Does that jive at all with your thinking?
No, yeah, it completely does. And then also even just in the educational system, like starting to think about, interdisciplinary learning. And I feel like I want to go on some geeky journey of looking at these root words of like interdependence, interdisciplinary, intersectional, because they all feel like they exist in the same ecosystem. But I think all those things are so important. Like interdependence is really important, and understanding how, we're all connected. There's another word. Is it interdependence? It's like a Buddhist word. It might be interdependence, but just basically explaining that we're all connected and something like that I really like. So I think that's really important. And then also interdisciplinary learning. I love that. And I feel like that's exactly what intersectional environmentalism is, because when we're thinking about history, we should also be thinking about how that relates to environmentalism. Or if we're thinking about even finance, we can't separate that from environmentalism, because I feel like all roads lead back to the environment and the earth, because this is our home. So yeah, I love making those connections back to the earth and thinking about how we're just, one piece of the puzzle in this big old ecosystem. So yeah.
So I got to ask, you're living where now?
So I'm in Silver Lake. I'm in the heart of LA for the first time. I know.
I remember Silver Lake. You moved there recently?
Yeah, so I was in like Santa Barbara, Ventura, but I never lived in LA before. I've just been in Orange County and then Ventura, Santa Barbara. So I'm in my little LA chapter. We'll see how long this lasts, but it's cute.
So how do you reconcile all this environmental earth stuff while living in the middle of a city?
I try to get away as much as I can. And then I'm also trying to think of this city as also my ecosystem, and understanding, okay, even though there's all these houses and, big skyscrapers not too far from me, that this is still an ecosystem, and thinking about, okay, how can I get more involved with, community gardens or food justice? Or there's an organization called Hike Club that's really cute, and it takes folks out to the mountains that might be, out here in the city. So I'm trying to figure out how to get as plugged in as I can, and finding some of those, nature experiences in this ecosystem. And then thinking about the specific environmental justice issues that we face here, especially in LA. There's so much food insecurity and houselessness and homelessness. So I've been kind of rethinking how I can re-engage with environmental activism here, because it looks so different than how it looked in Santa Barbara. And yeah, I have been thinking a lot about outdoor equity a little bit more, and how important it is, even in urban environments, for people to be able to go outside and explore the natural world around them. So I've been trying to research more programs that are trying to get folks in urban areas to still have those beautiful nature experiences, whether it's in a community garden, an urban hike, or helping facilitate folks kind of getting out in nature.
Mm-hmm. or you bring nature to you. Do you have? Are you besides the cat, any other animals in your life? How
right
about
now,
plants? Do you do plants in your house and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I have a succulent garden because that's the easiest for me right now, right outside. I'm thinking about doing a raised bed or something like that. And then I do have some indoor plants, but they're mostly like pothos plants. So just kind of simple stuff because I'm traveling around.
Yeah, because since, I moved to be closer to nature because I realized that I wanted everybody to appreciate the environment, and yet I was so disconnected from it. I'm trying to figure out a way to bridge that gap, right? How do we? Sometimes it's a lot of work. It's not practical to bring people to nature when they're so embedded in the city. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do there? How are we going to give people, or not give people, but how do we as individuals find more connection to nature when it seems so far away all the time?
I would say part of it is, I guess, rethinking what a nature experience can look like. You know, for me growing up, my grandma lived in a really urban environment in downtown St. Louis, and yet she still had a garden outside, or even sitting on the patio was such a great way to connect with the earth for her. So I guess just reminding people that we can also appreciate just going for a walk around the block. And in California, there's really so many cool like fruit bearing trees. And like, I think urban foraging is also really cool if done properly. So I feel like that's like a cool way to get connected with nature and understanding, you know, which plants are native plants, even in, you know, Los Angeles, and understanding more about the fruit bearing trees that are here and maybe how that can help with, you know, food insecurity and things like that. So I think you can still have a nature experience even if you're in like a city, and it can be just as valid.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to invite you officially right here, right now, to come visit me on the ranch. And, you know, maybe even perhaps we could put a little group together and have a nature immersion experience. Camping, you ever camp? You ever go camping? Or
yeah, it's been a while, and I've been glamping a little more lately, but
You've been Of course you've been glamping.
No, but I'd be down. Our executive director of IE lives in Texas right now, and she's actually at South by Southwest, and we have like a pretty good network in Austin. So I feel like that would be like a fun little experience to get some folks together whenever you are free and around the farm, which you live there, so you probably will be around the farm quite often.
I do, and we've been exploring, figuring out ways to create experiences to allow people to actually come out and be in nature and work the land and sleep under the stars. You know, maybe there's a program that we can collaborate on, which you can bring people that are in your world out here.
Yeah, that would be super cool. And I don't know if I remember, and this is just one example, but Seth, what's his name? Not Seth, the one who has a cannabis line. He's funny. His name's Seth Rogen, does these Airbnb experiences at his like homes or art studios. I think it's like a fundraiser or something like that, but he does these like fun experiences where people can come to his house or something. And I'm thinking of that. And I feel like it'd be fun to do something not quite like that, but you are pretty cool. So you do some sort of cool experience that's like rooted in bringing out a diverse group of people to have like a cool farm experience.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, we have snakes. We have spiders. We have wild boars. We have bobcats even.
Just hanging out. That's...
Yeah. Well, hanging out and eating our chickens.
No, that's so sad.
Yeah, well, they got to eat. They got babies. Babies.
Everybody's got to eat.
Yeah. What about hunting? Have you ever gone hunting?
So I personally have not, but my grandfather is from Arkansas and was a really big hunter. So like deer season, things like that. And I've also had some really good conversations with someone named Kimmy Warner. I think she's based in Hawaii. Her name's Kimmy Swimmy. And she's taught me a lot about hunting because she's also an environmentalist. And I've had some like cool dialogue with her about that. And I'm not vegan any longer. So I've been trying to explore the world of, I guess, I don't know if anyone could call it ethical meat consumption, but I think that's like a world that I'm kind of getting back into and open to exploring. But have I ever hunted? No. But I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, I guess that's the question is, can we be ethical humans? Can we do things more compassionately and more mindfully? Do you believe we can? You see, I mean, you're tiptoeing around it, but can you place your flag in the sand on this?
I would say that I think that there's a lot of amazing people who eat meat. There was a dialogue at this event that was called like hippies and hunters. So there was like vegan, plant-based activists and like hunter conservationists that I normally wouldn't interact with. And they were all together having a conversation.
Well, you wouldn't interact with either of them, right? Smelly hippies or hillbilly hunters?
Yeah, I was like, this is so interesting. But I went to the panel and it was cool hearing them actually talk about conservation and not like hate each other. So I feel like, yeah, you can, and there are people who won't agree that are vegan, and I completely understand, but I do have a lot of respect for hunters and, you know, sometimes indigenous folks that do so in a way that has a lot of respect for the earth. So if I had to draw a line in the sand, yeah, I do have respect for people who use all parts of an animal and are very conservation informed. And then I am not vegan, so I try, if I am eating something, whether it's, you know, cheese or eggs or meat, being able to get it from somewhere that's, you know, local and supporting local farmers, which I think is really important.
Do you find that you're getting a lot, I mean, speaking of haters, do you find you're getting a lot of resistance from people who are calling out hypocrisy, perhaps? I mean, it's so hard to be such a pure environmentalist, right? Such a without flaw. How do you reconcile that? Because there's so much, you know, there's that whole thing about all the environmentalists flying on private planes. I heard a thing with Bill Gates. He was patting himself on the back for funding all these carbon projects and excusing himself for flying around on private planes. Where are you on that? Like, how do we maintain such a pure perspective of what it means to be environmentalist while still being in the world?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like back in the day, and I don't know even when I'm referring to, but I don't know, there's just like a few environmental leaders that I feel like people would look up to, and they almost felt a bit inaccessible. And now we have Instagram and social media, so we know all these things about someone's diet, the clothes they're consuming, all of that. And I feel like sometimes it's kind of created a new environment where people are really even more critical, I guess, of leaders, which in some ways can be really helpful. But then also I feel like doesn't necessarily leave room for the human experience. So I think there is hypocrisy amongst everyone. However, I do think those with the most power and resources should try to maybe like if things are more accessible to you. So for example, with me being a sustainable blogger, sometimes I might have like, there might be a sustainable clothing brand that otherwise I couldn't afford. That's like, I want to send you a piece from this collection. So it's like, if I have access to that, then I definitely want to wear that as opposed to fast fashion. Or, okay, right now with my budget, maybe I can afford to go to the farmer's market and get this more like premium product that's better for the earth. And I feel like people with more resources do have a responsibility, in my opinion, to try to make the best decisions that they can, but also understanding that people are human. So I think there's a case for accountability. Like, okay, Bill Gates maybe flying around on private jets all the time isn't necessary unless there's some sort of security risk. But I feel like he would be fine. Like if he was in first class, he'd be fine.
I've always struggled with this. How do you draw that line, you know, between those that have power and those that don't? Like Greta Thunberg, you know, she doesn't seem to understand this, at least as I've seen the media projections of her. She's so humorless in her rhetoric. She doesn't understand that we're all flawed, right? We all have our hypocrisies, right? So I've just struggled with this. I don't know who to point the finger at, who to hold accountable. Who are we holding accountable but ourselves? That's how I see it. It's like, what am I doing today to be a better human? Probably I could be doing a lot more. And a lot of times I was soapboxing so much as an environmentalist, pointing my finger at others. But, you know, it's like he who hath no sin cast the first, you know, carbon credit. I don't know.
No, yeah, I agree. And I think the more environmentalists that I know who are coming forward with their imperfections, it's helping normalize our hypocrisy because none of us are perfect. And I'm excited about that, especially Gen Zers. I feel like I'm a cusper. So I'm the youngest millennial or the oldest Gen Zer. So I will be both when it, fits. As a millennial with Instagram, there was so much curation going on of trying to project being the perfect person. And then Gen Zers are different. On TikTok, they might be making a video. They're like, I'm doing my laundry right now. So maybe it's curated imperfection, which is weird. And we should probably break that down. But they're gravitating towards more like real, authentic content. So a lot of them are gravitating towards understanding that hypocrisy. So maybe we did have a moment in the environmental movement, the youth environmental movement, that was really just calling people out, cancel culture, etc. But I feel like right now there is a nice shift towards almost climate optimism, community care, and then embracing imperfections, because it's so easy to burn out if you think that all of the leaders that you're following are just perfect humans. And I think maybe sometimes it would be nice if our leaders did admit without guilt, like, yeah, there are things that I do that aren't perfect. And I'm trying to be the, not in a defensive way, but just saying, hey, here are things that I want to work on. And here are things that I am doing. And I want to, keep growing and expanding, but progress over perfection, that would help normalize it for other people.
I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. There's just so much energy wasted in, telling other people how or what to do, and that's energy we could be putting into fixing our local whatever, like our immediate environment, or even the immediate environment of the body, your health. Like think about how unhealthy a lot of this activism is. People stopping off at McDonald's on the way to a protest, so it's like, I think our stepping into a more holistic, hopefully culturally, a more holistic perspective on ourselves and our role in making a difference. It's not like such a on-demand consumer mentality where we want it the way we want it, but it's more, how are we going to actually get our hands in it and get our hands dirty and participate and build it and create it and grow it, moreover.
Yeah, and that's what gets me kind of excited about the environmental space. Just like what you said, I hope people get really plugged into what's going on locally, because I feel like we have a better shot at tackling global issues if we can, really get to know our local communities, get to know our local activists, grassroots organizations. What are the issues? Who are the farmers? Who are the local artisans? I'm all about strengthening and creating really resilient local communities. And then also there's a lot of reward in that, because, sometimes even the federal government or global policy, it takes a long time. But I've seen community gardens be built in a matter of months because someone went to a city council meeting or volunteered with an organization, and it feels really good. So I hope that's something that people are able to kind of tap into a little bit more.
Yeah, and then it always comes back to, old ideas, right? From our elders of yore, like the ancient wisdom, because there is a catchphrase that it worked. Think globally, act locally. Oh, yeah. They already invented it.
And it's just coming back. It was funny. I saw a TikTok about, in the early 2000s, there were these really chunky belts that people were wearing. And there's Gen Zers that are like, these chunky belts are the best fashion statement. And there's all these photos of early 2000s red carpets with people wearing these chunky belts. So it's okay, chunky belts are back. Maybe think, what is it? Think global, act local. That can come back to, yeah.
Well, again, it's that double helix, we're always just twisting and unwinding and retwisting again, like the polar energies work. You're always going back and forth betwixt the two. So what's next? What do you have on the horizon?
Lately, I've been working on, I wanted a lot more joy in my life. I think the first year of kind of just figuring out what was going on in my life in 2020 was really intense and not necessarily the healthiest. I said yes to everything, and I really needed to just have some direction and decided to get more positive. So I decided, I want to start hosting fun community concerts that are environmentally focused. And I've been meeting a lot of like fun artists and musicians around Los Angeles. So I've been having these events called Earth Sessions, where we partner with local grassroots environmental organizations and like local musicians, and we kind of put everybody in a room and we have like a panel conversation to learn about what the local orgs are doing, get people connected so they can meet them. We, have like a little fundraiser for them, and then we have like a beautiful performance under a tree with like someone playing some instrument. And it's just been such a joyful way to re-engage with environmental education that doesn't feel super heavy and feels very solutions focused and locally focused. So we had 8 shows last year, and we're planning some shows for this year. So super excited about that.
Wow, Leah, it's so good to catch up after too long. And I do hope you come to visit us and bring your sleeping bag and your boots.
I will.
Yeah, because too much Zoom going on.
I know there's so much Zoom. And then let me know if you're ever, around LA.
I will do. Okay. Thank you.